Looking at this map when it came out, just the other day as it came out. Actually, I was looking at it today. So yesterday, McRaven had this little thing to get together, and this dude who was thinking he was being clever was talking shit. And I said, "Yeah, you like to fight." So there's a couple of things I want to take care of. And I said, the most deadliest people I know like to fight. And the thing is, he thought that I was talking about him, but I wasn't, because he's all super ego. When excellence is achieved, excellence is expected. Those who actually know what they're doing work for excellence. It doesn't matter what it is. To be the excellence of themselves, excellence of everything they do. See, both Hammett, which I assume is Captain Hammett, or even maybe an admiral, due to McRaven's BS, because he's got his little mini me, and he has fucked up the Navy. Well, the Navy was already fucked up anyways, because it is a bigoted organization. That is by behavior, not that I really see. I was sitting there thinking about Confire. And see, Bontrager used Confire and Brum. Brum was to as his little externalizations. Brum was the brains. Confire was supposed to be the brawn, but Confire's never. He might have been a wrestler, but he was never a wrestler. He knows it just by how I move. Or if he, I would have wiped him up off the fucking ground, off the mat with ease. And he knows it. Bullshitters are never really that good. And he's a bullshitter. And that's why he has to hide the behaviors of Intel, because why they are getting their ass handed to them by the rest of the world, and they have to downgrade to do forges as opposed to doing high end chips. Because of the arrogance, ignorant arrogance. Our bigotry is being used against us. I'm about to explain how. Well, this is the hypothesis. Once I finish reading The Divine Institution, I'm pretty sure that's what's happening, and I'll explain in a second. So, McRaven's going to probably attack my sister and her family. And, yeah, he better kill me if he does so. Because I will find him and I will kill him if he does. And he knows my personality. He knows not a single person gets to those gates without having it. See, McRaven's going to be saying, well, and Kennedy is the same way as well. She would be nothing more than a hooker on the streets, just like without her money and without the connections. Just like Ms. Lewis. They're really just pathetic people. Give them a few bucks and polishes over a lot of shittiness of self. And all the bigots are going, well, he's our bigot hero. I don't give a fuck if they're your bigot heroes. You harm my family, and you know it's coming. Just like Mr. Briscoe had his little Sicario sit there and give me a beer and come up to talk to me and shit. Sitting there looking at me, and I'm looking, and I had to wink. He's looking at me like, what the fuck? What Mr. Briscoe does not know or realize is, if it wasn't for all this shit surrounding him and his Sicario, plus those other two, yeah, there's a high probability, because I don't fucking miss. And it's not going to be messy. And it's not even going to be me. I said I would bring civilization, and I fucking meant it. And then you have McRaven protecting these fucking shit people, McRaven and Kennedy. Yeah, that's not cool. Because he wants to sit there and say, look, I show how to freaking do damn Negroes. Fucking idiotic bigots all think the same damn way. Stupid and cowardice. Because see, Hammett was a coward, so was Bontrager. Hammett got in an argument with, and he went and ran like a little bitch instead of being able to, have a conversation. Because he doesn't believe he has to. It's the same thing McConnell does. It's the same reason that McConnell has been played by China, which I'll explain in a bit. So even if he is, he's always going to be a bigot. He's always going to be a bigot and a little bitch and a little coward. Doesn't matter what he's done. It's easy to be easier to be courageous when everyone around you is kind of doing their job. And then especially if you know that you got your little boy above to smooth over all your bullshit and mistakes. Little Texas bigots. So I always you saw that little thing with Abbott, all everyone standing up there, little fucking bitch. Every one of them Klan members probably, if not Klan in action, Klan in thought, in meme set. The deadliest persons are deadly because of a desire for excellence at what they do, to be the absolute best at what they do. Because real warriors know. Like dumbasses talking about, oh, I went into here with six spikers and blah 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 blah. See, McRaven keeps trying to place me into like a working class. I'm no working class. I never have been. And the working class can get all upset about it. I don't fucking care. As I've said, McRaven and Kennedy are beneath me by even using their own standards. So this whole little fucking invading my privacy, this will be ending soon. They're gonna try to block me from making money. As you've already seen with Wall Street, because they know what my monitor was looking like. While meanwhile, he's been learning how to scalp and all that other shit. It's like he uses that little girl down in the coffee shop. Yes, not because yeah, and she's probably a good piece of ass, but mainly it was because you can't like she was. Yeah, hey, he was a cool dude. She wasn't a bigot. She wasn't a racist. Now he's gonna turn her into a bigot and a racist. She's gonna have to try to justify her emotions. This is why one of the other reasons they didn't want women in the military is because women can easily be turned. But then again, so can most men. Especially if they're NPD or psychopathy, because they're just feminine. And they're highly neurotic. And just in case, so we go back, remember this is an NPD person. This is, how they break the world up as an externalization. And this is who they are. It's nothing more than a superego and, psychopath, which is nothing more than a stomach. And in my well, there's like some people are like, well, then they're really smart. Actually, they're not. They just use back and forth dialectical reasoning. While it is useful getting us to a higher self, they're actually still very, very much cowards. Because this is all you have to do is listen to the preachers. What's the emotions they all work on, especially down in the South. It's the Southern Anabaptist. This is the externalization when the realization they're miserable. They are absolutely miserable people. They do emotionalize. Scared little shits. So, going back to as I said, I have to, and I definitely need to finish listening to this one and read her book. But so far, she's been very spot on, especially as far as the behaviors about how shitty the evangelicals have turned this country into a hellhole, into a shithole. One of the hypothesis, and I'm going to need more data, and it only came to me this afternoon as I was thinking about the situation. So right now it's still a hypothesis. Hypothesis, P of X. Is we lost to China. See, everyone's talked about how you look at the civil rights era. Martin Luther King was killed because he was talking about jobs. It wasn't just civil rights. Because it was just civil rights, it was like, oh, look at them little Negroes. Oh. As soon as you went for civil rights, as soon as you said, okay, the economics are one. That's when they killed him. So you had civil rights. We do, and the elders knew that at the time. So immediately, what they do, what you had the war on drugs. But the other thing was he removed the economics, manufacturing, education. It was funny because I was talking about education. So before, as I was speaking to my next door neighbor, and I said, "Oh yeah, so it's true. You knew you were screwing up our schools." And he was thinking, because I'm taught everything is culture. Everything is the emotion set of who you are. The external self doesn't really matter to me. It's like, yeah, whatever. I never. So he's thinking, oh, you went to black schools or segregated schools. I went to private schools, and if they were segregated, they're 95% Caucasian, 99 usually. So when I say our schools, I was thinking in terms of myself, law of Weefum, what is normal for me. Those are the schools that I said that I was referring to that have been devalued. And then you'd have Betsy DeVos doing the whole voucher shit. You have school choice. You could go from one public school to another public school, at least or if you have in Chicago, what they did is they broke up the school districts instead of being in Florida, which probably start changing now. The county is one unified school district. Chicago, they break it up so that way it's basically a bunch of little private sectors, because schools are funded by property taxes. So DeVos is doing that to create segregation, then get people who are poor to pay for segregated schools again. They're introducing segregation. And this is all comes back to, and I'm explaining how China is involved, the situation that we're dealing with in China right now. These bigots are they're complete idiots. Brilliant in their bullshit, but and they're thinking, whoa, we believe these black folks, we'll just do it for the rest of the world. And we lost the rest of the world. The main export that gives people think it's gives people like the thought of idea of America, it's a land of freedom, right? The main export of America is that idea, and seeing this idea being destroyed means we're just a bunch of bullshitters. Well, in the South, they were a bunch of bullshitters. They were, they wanted to be kings and queens, and they were making poor people, Caucasians, poor, and they maintained the whole thing of black African Americans as being the lowest rung. And then through their whole forced breeding, that's why they came up with their one drop rule, so that way they can still keep raping black African American women, and then they can attack if a black guy dated or married a Caucasian woman. They believe they have the right to interfere in the private lives of other persons, and then talk about their private rights. Henceforth, McRaven and Kennedy, same behavior, same shit, different pile. It's kind of sad that her brothers did so much for this country, and she was, as you can see, she was helping the racism and foster the racism that's been going on, and almost to overturn the country by its fostered racism and bigotry that she was using a good man's ideas to do. She's fucking pathetic. So as I said, in the divine institution, we're seeing, so the evangelicals and the Dixiecrats went from, because they don't believe they have. That's why we have this log jam in Congress, because they're saying, well, you represent those people and those people don't exist, so we don't have to talk to you. And you look at the Republican Party from that perspective, their behavior makes sense. You listen to Mitch McConnell and his pedantic bullshit. That's another fucking coward there ever been, as if there ever's been one. You look at Rick Scott's little thing. That's how he thinks about the average human American, Caucasian American. These assholes are so full of shit, so cowardly, so incompetent. Their only competence is incompetence, because bigotry is a show of incompetence. And it's a toddler. So, getting back to the civil rights era, Martin Martin, whole thing with his Poor People's March, was the last thing he did before he passed away, or he actually was gunned down and killed. And oh yeah, McRaven's thinking he's gonna try to use this situation to roll himself to the president and say he saved the republic. When no, he wants to be the dictator. Yes, he can't be anything else, especially because since he did not understand or couldn't believe who I am. So you put him in presidency, understand what's coming down the line. So continuing on, you have this. So the Democrats, we see the awakening. This is the hypothesis right now. You'll have to look at the research and figure out when different things. But now you have this problem. If the quote, the blacks are free, that means they can go and become part of the union. You can't stop them because they were using the unions to stop African Americans from getting into the public companies and unions. So it was like, okay, economic freedom. Well, then yeah, cut the schools, cut lower wage, high skilled jobs. Boom. That means destroy unions. Oh, and then first, so how do you cut the jobs? You move them away. That NAFTA, that was part of this whole thing. First, you got rid of the union, so there wasn't anything to fight against NAFTA, to fight against offshoring. While there could be some offshoring and stuff, like I said, 70-30. And you could say, well, that's, I'll get back, 70-30 or whatever. You might say, well, how could you say that? Well, that's a normal part of business or something. And I could say that because it's a normal part of business. We see with Apple trying to get everybody, turn all the Macs into thin clients and getting everyone to use iCloud as their storage unit, but also that way they can run their AIs through your data on their servers, as opposed to keeping your, like I have my shit, and all of a sudden today it moved my desktop to iCloud after it had been moved off of iCloud. My other computer, they filled up, and it's only 250 gigs, and it shouldn't, and I don't use that much, but it's filled to the brim because they dump a lot of bullshit data onto your hard drive. Because the main thing is for you to use iCloud, for you to pay for iCloud, basically paying rents as opposed to ownership. And then they can say, well, your data isn't yours, it's ours. That's what Silicon Valley's doing. So continuing on. So the first thing they had to do was cut the unions. First, you have, okay, y'all, the racism. So they try to go with the schools and the bullshit school choice crap. Then they use guns. It's the whole NRA, the gun thing. All right. Even if it wasn't directly, this is a meme idea. A meme is an entity in and of itself. The gun lobby, and now you have the gun owners of America who are talking about the militia unit. That way they can subvert the Second Amendment even further, because a well-regulated militia is the National Guard. To even use the originalist, because the militiamen used their flintlock rifles that they used for hunting and keeping vermin off their land to go fight. So their weapons were held at home. Nothing wrong with that. But this whole thing about getting these gun nuts all fucked up, and the South having this gun culture, that's all about because everyone had to participate in keeping the Negroes down. This is just that same extension. That's the same through line. Because you have the NRA doing around the 70s, all of a sudden going from LaPierre was in, you're going from a hunting and a sportsman's club, clay pigeons, hunting, fox hunting, going out for some deer hunting, feeding your family, things like that. This whole fucking wackadoo thing about, I gotta have a gun, you little bitch. No, what that is them niggers are coming, we need to have weapons so we can shoot them. Remember Manchin? Meanwhile, he's screwing over West Virginians with the power bill. And again, gets them to protect him as he's fucking them. Gotta love it, huh? Anyway. So that's the reason of the guns. Then what do you have as Reagan comes in after pretty much doing treason? Now, mind you, deregulation, some things are deregulation, yeah, it's cool. But once you deregulate and you see, like, this is not good, you go, okay, let's move the floor back up. See, because they know you see what happens with these, with the regional airlines. These pilots getting paid nothing, pennies, overworked. I don't want to pilot. She's been awake for 16 hours flying on my plane. That's ridiculous. This whole cute quality of life they've just wiped out, because that was the same shit that was going on in the South. They've Southified the United States. That's why those bases need to be changed, because the reason they had those bases named after Confederate heroes was, or Confederate traitors, was to say, oh, we're still here to protect you. These bases aren't to protect them. But it's continuing on about the initial. So now you have the guns, now you have the understanding of the Marshall situation. Because bigots are externalized selves. Bigotry is just, and then racism is just a codified psychopathy. So now you have. So before that, Nixon goes and he takes us off the gold standard. So all right, it weakens us from the gold standard. That means now he puts us onto a floating cash. So that means people have to work their ass off, constantly working. So the people at the lowest end will have to keep working even harder as everything they create is being eroded away. Because remember, if you own, you depreciate. So inflation goes up, you're depreciating, you're still getting a 0 point. And if you can depreciate faster than inflation, you're actually making money off depreciation of your ownership. That's why data is so important to feed these, because they own your data. That's considered a value asset, real estate. So you depreciate your land asset, the thing, improvement on your land, right? Property rights, ownership rights of self, ownership rights of your production, your mental production. That's why TikTok, you won't see me get on TikTok, because it's owned by China. So therefore, they're owning all that personality data that they're going to use to attack us later, and also to enslave the rest of the world. But we'll get to that later. That's that whole AI quantum computing thing. So Nixon firstly, so if Nixon gets first, he gets everybody who's on the bottom. They have to run harder due to a floating currency off the gold standard, and it was useful because of the whole situation. He's just that, they're going to say multiple other things, but the main thing is to get people to work harder as you float the currency. Second thing is open up China. Oh, open up China, blah, blah, blah. A bunch of peasants, billion mouths. Oh my gosh, look at all that untapped capital. It's basically a rundown house you can fix up. So they thought, because they're always, and you have let's start looking, the question I need to know is, when did they start, bigots start calling Asians the model minority? If not directly, but implicitly. Because that's what those dipshits went over there and thinking. And they're still thinking. That's why, McConnell's wife basically is a traitor. All that data about and knowledge of our shipping systems went straight to China. Paved little roads in Kentucky. Still, and then McConnell babbles about the money, because he wants to keep Kentuckians poor, as opposed to getting parts of all the money he's stealing from them. And then he wants to export it to the rest of the country, because he even says, I don't have to worry about this. I can fuck up I can fuck up the whole country. All I have to do is bamboozle the Kentuckians. back to Nixon, takes us off the gold standards, puts us on a floating capital, makes the lower classes work their asses off. And the thing is, which is not right, because as Americans, you're supposed to be everyone's supposed to be fully owning the entire country. But the rich knew this. The super rich knew that then, so they just pulled the money on up. But the secondary thing is it then the war on drugs. And then, as we know directly, that they purposely went after, to quote, hippies, or which were the bigots are bitching about woke. That's why they're yelling so loudly. They're very good at yelling, but they're really just cowards because they're screeching little bitches. Because it means basically, I have to compete, and I know that you do. Basically, what they're saying is they have to compete, and they know that they can't. So step one, float the currency. Get people to work hard and then devalue all of their work. Eat it up with inflation. Meanwhile, making them pay for that eating inflation through depreciation of their assets on their taxes. Send the tax burden all the way down to the others, as you can see with the carbon tax that was going on in the World Economic Forum. They were all giddy about that. We can get even though we're the carbon polluters and we're not going to pay for it. We could send that carbon thing down to the externalize it to their everyday folks, and then we take their money at carbon taxes and we make money off of it. And then we tell them they're not taking responsibility, when it's the projection they're not taking responsibility. That was same. It's the Rick Scott thing, just done now with carbon. It's better that they take responsibility and then pass it on in prices, as opposed because because the prices were going to go up, and then then the consumers are going to like, I don't want that. You're going to fix that, but we still need you to do this, and they don't want to do that. And most people wouldn't really care if they saw that you were trying to get something that you were putting forward, but the fact that they're just lazy shits. So first, step one, devalue the currency. Step two, attack African American school. You have the war on drugs. Step three, attack the schools. Step four, destroy the unions. Collective bargaining, get them to sit there. Sorry. Step four, guns. So that way, you're on our side, and everyone gets. Because let me go into, you see how what they act like if a black American goes in and gets all guns. Oh, they freak out. They freak the fuck out. And I'm talking about guns. I'm talking about M4s and AR-15s, or AR-15s, which are basically something like M4s, or the new Spear once another civilian model comes out, which is the M5 Spear M5. So we start with, once again, devalue the currency, attack anyone, which were the hippies, quote hippies, liberals, which is kind of hilarious because liberal means people who are forward thinking. We live in a liberal democracy, forward thinking democracy. Secularist, when we are a secular country by the Constitution. So they're destroying the Constitution. Attack African Americans through the war on drugs. Stand up a national convict leasing from that war on drugs. Turn the police into militarized police to attack African American communities, black African American communities. Then get the non-police persons to get all start humping their guns. Because if they were really, should be able to, bolt action shotgun, handgun, you know, long gun. If you're a hunter, you go in and get a bolt action rifle. If you're a hunter, that's all you need. And actually, that's what you really want. You should be able to get that when you're 18. Not a problem. Go feed your family. So you get these people all hyped up on these things because the idea, you're extending that Southern idea of turning everyone into attacking black African Americans. Then you kick the table from them being able to go into low wage jobs and then work their way up into the top of the food chain. That's why you saw them flipping out over Obama. It has nothing to do with his competence. It's the fact of their incompetence. And then you start doing, because they don't want you reading about Marxism. Granted, I'm not a big fan of everything that Marx says, but one thing is everyone who's ever studied business knows he was the first to show business cycles. And we know through the book, if you read the book Neo Economy, they knew they were going to tank the 2008 recession, to create the recession in 2008, and they know there's about to be a recession coming up soon. Hopefully they're trying to tamp down that it's just going to be a normal, regular recession, which is a normal part of things. We should have had a recession about 16 or 17, every 10 years, release the steam, and we should be coming out of it. But when the Fed tried to lower interest rates, Trump screamed, and now that recession is going to be more prolonged because it's gone up too high. And then you have the Republicans in Congress knowing this and then saying, well, we're not going to do the things that will help the average person get through that recession as the businesses shift and shuffle, because they're going to go in and steal all these businesses. Kept coming to my mind is Twinkies. I went and got a Twinkie the other day. It was at a convenience store. Now, growing up, Twinkies are nice and fluffy, and they used to be about 2 to, let's say, about an inch in fluff, right? This thing was probably about a little over 3/4 of an inch, maybe not even 3/4, about a little less than a half inch, maybe. And it was just hard and whatever. They even got Twinkies from a regular Twinkie. Everything's getting small ever since 2000. They kind of shrink and cut things. Go back and look at the size, at the volumes at prior to 2000 to what they are now, and they just keep shrinking the packaging and charging more at that. But you look at Twinkies and a Hostess, and there was a strong union there. It was making money. People were doing well. The vulture capitalists came in, loaded up with debt, because if they see something, because everything is afloat to them, that's why they don't want you to do the whole modern monetary theory, because modern monetary theory is nothing more than a float. What I mean by a float is a debt. So they float. So they pull all they use. They destroy the company pretty much, and then leave the shell, sell every pieces off, ladle it with debt that they borrowed to take it over, right? So they give them the debt, they take the capital, then they take all the capital from the cash flows through fees, then they sell everything off, and then what's left are the workers, less money, no union, and an unhealthy company, because they've taken all the money, and now they're running harder, and they're just accepting a little bit just to try to stay afloat. That's psychopathy 101. So you might be asking, what is opening up? Oh yeah, China, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and all that. Well, the Trans-Pacific Partnership would have put these islands and everything back into the sphere of America, but since Trump is pretty much bought out, he's thinking he's and all of our and Murdoch thinks he's going to turn his son into a king by breaking off Australia. He's about to find out the Chinese will end up killing him or making him a vassal. They're going to use the same system that they used back during the Mongol Empire. Xi is a student of history. All of this destruction of the United States is because the Southerners, bigots, psychopaths, are cowards and candy asses and lost the Civil War. And they're about to continue losing the Civil War. And they're destroying this country with their BS. All of these islands, these are blockade areas. They're going to eventually put. This is to cut off Australia. Only other part of this island is the hotspot in Hawaii. That cuts off. That means they have now control of shipping back to the United States and to Central America and to South America. Then they use that to control the shipping lanes through the South, through the South China Sea area through to Australia and India and Africa. Our bigotry is destroying our trade routes. Australians are notoriously bigoted. I'm sitting here. Up in was it Yosemite? Some fucking I had left my key in my bike. This bigot rolls. Oh, I'm talking about my Harley. Dumbass is telling on himself. He'd stole my key. Granted, I had my secondary key with me. I'm just looking at this little fucker. You little bitch. He's probably even told. He's hearing all this shit's probably told his friend, I did that. Now what his friends are going to be thinking? America's going down because America can't get past its original sin. Australia has only 25 million people. They're the Wild West for China. You even move 300 million people over there, you've increased your economics by tenfold. And they need Australia to no longer be part of the Commonwealth. And the Murdochs are making that happen. And Tucker Carlson with his little his candy ass cowardly new money bullshit is making that happen. Orban. Then Erdogan wants to be the Caliph, the Middle East. All of these motherfuckers got with China. They played their narcissism, their cluster B bullshit like a fiddle. And we're destroying our country. Meanwhile, you have Ukraine trying to save their culture, themselves, their name, who they are. because they know what Stalin did. Putin is a Stalinist, not a Leninist, a Stalinist. I'm granted, Lenin did some dumb shit. I mean, Stalin. I mean, Lenin did not realize just how bad Stalin was until right before he died. America either gets its head out of its ass, or shit's gonna get worse. And European Americans, you can't blame African Americans. You can only blame yourselves because you're willing to overthrow this country for your perceived superiority. And it's not your skin, it's the ideas that you aren't willing, that the Southerners are willing to destroy this country. And they'll give you somebody to blame. Meanwhile, we'll be beholden to China, just like as we saw what happened with GM and Tesla. He opened that gigafactory. They have stolen your shit. They have stolen Elon stuff. Trust me, if they've built it, they've stolen it. This map just says it all. So one more time. So to close it up, Martin Luther King did the Poor People's March. The reaction to the Poor People's March was the floating of the Capitol. People have to work really hard and never get ahead. Cutting the unions, cutting the pensions so people never stop having to work. Pushing the NRA. Well, also, first you have the war on drugs, then you have the NRA with the gun lobby to create more fear. Then the whipsawing of the economics to steal more money from people. And then the scapegoating of others. And the destruction of the schooling system. So we're less globally competitive at all levels. That's the whole reason they don't want you to get rid of debt, because they're just like, okay, if they're going to go on debt, then once again, they believe it's, when you look at it as purely as a property, your property rights, you go to education, well, they believe they own that. So they saddle these kids with debt. And they say, well, you can't pay that debt off. Because we own that property. We own your mind. We own your production. That's what they're saying. That's un-American. I have more rights to say that than they do. Because if you're American, you as an individual have the right to your production. And why do I say that I have more rights to that? Because I am a blue blood. And that's how this worked. One of the main reasons the House of Windsor has survived is because they do not get involved. They are simply as like, well, not really, but in many ways, because because that's the other thing is they're trying because they think they were going to get them to quit that non-involvement, which is stupid. If the House of Windsor falls, so falls the U.S. That's how tightly linked we are. And that's one of the reasons you heard Trump talking about, mostly because of his bigotry, that Meghan Markle should give up her title. No, and that's why you see all the attacks on Meghan Markle. And then you have that attack by Sports Illustrated onto my mom, which was just like, or supposed attack. No, they'll go. No, the bigots will go try to go find somebody else. Well, they can go fuck themselves. The play is already shown. You don't have to like a person, but not be stupid about it. Oh, so back to what I was saying, which is destruction of the economy, float of the monetary policy, war on drugs to attack the hippies and the black African Americans, war on schools, defund the schools to 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 create a lower workforce. Even though we need a high technological workforce, so you defund the schools. Then you're after they attack the schools, then you have convict leasing in the new prison industrial complex. Then they're talking about that's the whole thing of privatize everything. Then your health, steal your health as oh your value of your health is worth this much, so we're going to get you to pay for it, and then when it's there, when you need it, we're going to take that away, privatize that, so that way now you're working harder to try to get to go far less. Destroy the unions, lower the wages, so that way they take all the capital upwards to them, keep you running, get you to blame the black African Americans when they're really the targets were European Americans in the unions. So that's all that capital. Whipsaw the back and forth the general economy to steal your money as you if you build anything up, take that from you by cutting your job losses. This is just pure greed. Oh, and then mainly the main big thing is outsource all that manufacturing to China, who's now turning it around to taking all that manufacturing and psychological know-how to use it to take over the world. You bigots have fucked shit up bigly with the help of Mitch McConnell, the Murdochs, and his mouthpiece of Fox News, and then because it's going to be because Murdochs are looking at it as Lankham is going to be he thinks he'll be the kingmaker and the controller of Australia, and England because he has to break off Australia to break off the Commonwealth. That means he would have to go through all 56 countries of the Commonwealth to include South Africa and Britain, which would then so you have Brexit because Brexit was relying on the on trading with the Commonwealth countries, but the Murdochs are going to undercut that, keep them because Australians are ridiculously bigoted as they're losing these trade deals to China because everyone knows how bigoted they are. Then then they can overthrow or completely weaken the House of Windsor to nothing. that weakens England, destroys the Commonwealth, puts the Murdochs at top, and then you have the Trumps controlling America, or somebody like Trump, maybe not as unpolished, and it just becomes an authoritarian world, and democracy is dead, secularism is dead, the Constitution. Oh, and the other thing, that's what the other thing is: create a new constitutional convention to get rid of secularism and everything that made this country great, and democracy. If you want gun reform, we need 4 senators. If you want to stop this, we need 4 senators. 4 non-Republican Dixiecrat senators. Because the Republican Party is not going to change. You're not going to purge the Dixiecrats out of the Republican Party until they've gotten their ass handed to them several cycles. So you have to lose 2022, 2024 presidential, then 2028 presidential. Then 2026, and then 2028 presidential. Kids, if you want your country, you have. And I'm not even a big Democrat. I am far more Republican than I am Democrat. I do not like a lot of, but I am an old school business style Republican. I'm no leftist hippie. But I am a patriot. And my oaths are two different systems, the American and the British. And as the British, I am that system. As an American, I am too, but most Americans don't realize that, because they took away your education for you to understand, your civics education, understand how to run your country, how to run our country. Keep this up, China's going to turn all you Caucasians into slaves. And they'll, your dumbasses will still keep kicking down, which is the goal, to keep you looking the wrong direction. And pray for those defenders of what was left of the Azov battalion. And yeah, I know who they are, but they were willing to put down, at least, yeah, they're still going to be who they're going to be. But unlike the bigots of the South, American South, they're willing to put Ukraine first. Slava Ukraine. Glory to democracy, and may the flag forever wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave.